See. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming to our third lecture of McLaughlin Garden's Winter Lecture Series. My name is Corey. I'm the horticulturist and also the organizer for the Winter Lecture Series. And today I am very excited to be able to welcome Danny Gent to the McLaughlin Garden. Danny is the proprietor of Full Stem Ahead. You see that pun? Flower farm in Troy, Maine, where she grows a variety of cut flowers, not to mention her award-winning dahlias. So in this presentation today, she's going to be talking about the A to Z's of growing dahlias from harvesting and storing for winter. So she's going to talk about it all. And I'm excited. I hope you are. And just quickly, before I hand over to her, I would just like to thank everyone in person and who is online. Thank you for being here. And thank you to our lovely volunteers providing food for this event. If you'd like to see more programming like this, feel free to leave a donation for the garden. You can do so in the donation bin over there or online on our website. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Danny.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I'm glad to see everybody in person and on Zoom. Welcome out in cyberspace. I'm Danny Gent, and I own Full Stem Ahead Flower Farm, like Corey said. And this is my husband in the back here, Chris, who's my partner in life, my partner on the farm. And we wouldn't be able to do what we do without Chris. So I've been growing dahlias for over 10 years now, and one thing about dahlias, more than I love about growing dahlias, is actually talking about growing dahlias. I was a master gardener, and I love talking about growing things and teaching others how to do it. So this is a dream come true for me to be able to give this presentation to you. So welcome and thank you. So let's get started. Let's talk about some dahlias. Okay. Some fun facts about dahlias that you may not know. They're the national flower of Mexico. And they grow naturally in the mountains in Mexico and Guatemala. That's why they get a little cranky in the summer months, because they grow at a little higher elevation, and I like nice and cool-ish weather, temperate weather, which makes them great to grow in Maine till the frost comes. And the tubers are edible, actually. And the water stalks were used to carry because the stalks are hollow, hunters used to fill them up with water and carry them. And they would eat them like potatoes. So now I would never let anybody eat my tubers, but you can. They're edible. And the first hybridizers of tubers of dahlias were in Holland, and what happened was Mexico had shipped a box of tubers over to Holland in the 1800s, and only one tuber made it, but they got bit by the dahlia bug by that one tuber, started growing it and hybridizing it, and then that's the dahlias that we see today. Now the dahlias in Mexico don't look like these ones here. They're more of a single with just petals, kind of like a daisy or something like that. Where the pollen ring is exposed. So they look a lot different, and they've just been hybridized through the years to have more petals and different forms and things like that. But they were, they're still in Mexico growing naturally. And why dahlias are able to be hybridized so much is because of their genetic makeup. They're octoploids, so there's a lot of genetic variations that can be created from hybridizing dahlias. And then they also have transposons or jumping genes that move from place to place. So you'll find that if you breed dahlias, it takes a few years to actually grow a dahlia. Like if I were to hybridize one and breed two dahlias together, they like to grow them on for about 3 years before they can actually name that hybrid and sell that hybrid. And what they do is they send them to trial gardens all around the country. I used to work in a trial garden and volunteer in one, growing different hybrids, because they have to grow true. So you save that tuber, that's a clone. And then the following year, they'll grow it. If it looks the same, they're like, okay, that's year two. Then they'll grow it the following year. And then after 3 years, if it still stays the same, then it's good. But so that's kind of how hybridizers do it. But it's very interesting how they have such a unique genetic makeup. So these are the different types of forms here. Speaking of different types, so this is a formal decorative, and that one's called the Habit Blue Eye. And this is a water lily form. That's a Rancho. And then you have your ball dahlias. That's Ivanetti. And they all have names. When you hybridize it, you get to name it, which is fun. And then novelty fully double. That one's advanced. The semi-cactus, spiky looking. That one's called Park Princess. And Collarette. And these all came from my farm, by the way. I love that picture with their rainbow. Isn't that cool? And that one's lacerated. Yeah, that one is Myrtle's Folly. So some information about the tuber anatomy, just so you know. The crown is the pink part there. And when we split off tubers or separate divide tubers, you always want to make sure you get part of the crown because that's actually where the eye comes out there. And then you have the neck, which is the purple part. And then you have the tuber part, which is the green. And that's where it stores all of its energy during the, when it's dormant. And then when it goes to sprout in the springtime, that's kind of where it sucks up all of its energy from to grow a new plant. Okay, so once you have your dahlia tuber and you're like it's getting near spring, you're getting excited, it's almost dahlia time. One way you can wake up your dahlias is you can put them in a warm room around 70 degrees about 2 to 6 weeks before planting out. Now, some tubers wake up really quickly. Like I have a lot of these tubers here already have eyes. They already got little sprouts. And then other ones, they tend to be a little bit slower. Like if you grow Cafe au Lait, she's a late bloomer, unfortunately. So it takes a little bit for them to wake up. So, as you grow dahlias, you learn the different varieties and you know which ones kind of wake up a little faster than others. And then maybe just wake those ones up a little earlier so you can get them in the ground and, get them ready to plant out. When the tubers are waking up, it's critical time for drying out or for disease or rotting. So because they are kind of using that energy, that's kind of when the tubers tend to like have issues when you're taking them out of storage and transitioning to planting them out in the field. But you can also pot them up in seed starting mix or in a light fluffy potting mix before planting out. So if you want to do that, you just kind of, you get your pot and then you plant it, 4 inches down, and then you put it in a nice warm sunny spot. And then, eventually you'll get some growth and then start watering it. And you can kind of get a little jump start on the season because Maine is such a short growing season here, you kind of want to get it going before just don't do it too soon. If you plant it out with the green, with the leaves and you get a frost, then, it'll definitely do damage to the plant. And then you don't want to water the pot a lot while it's sprouting when it first starts, just because the tuber doesn't really have a lot of roots yet, so the tuber can rot. So you want to be very gentle. Don't be a heavy water when it first starts sprouting. You kind of want to, be easy going with it. And then you put them in a sunny location, or you can put them under grow lights. I've grown dahlias under grow lights, and no problem there. It's just when you go to transition them to being outside, obviously you want to harden them off, and you want to gradually expose them to a little more light each day before you, plant them out into their forever home. Okay, so now we have to prepare our garden. We got our tubers all nice and woken up; they're ready to go. first thing you want to do is pick the right spot in your yard, right? You want to choose a sunny location with 6 hours or more. Afternoon shade is not actually a bad thing because in the summertime, when it gets really hot, it's actually very comforting to them to not have that like afternoon sun, bearing down on them. Um, so if it gets the morning sun and it gets a little more than 6 hours of sun, then you're okay. But if it's a real shady spot, I don't recommend because what I found in my old yard in Maryland was I had a bunch of pine trees that kind of shaded them over in the afternoons and they all were like listing to the side to get to the light and they would fall over sometimes if I didn't stake them good enough. So they will try to bend towards the light and you don't want that. You want nice tall, straight plants. um, Next thing is you want to make sure you check your soil. How many of you do soil tests in your yard or have done a soil test? It's a really, really inexpensive way. It's a really, really inexpensive way of knowing what exactly is going on with your soil and if you go through University of Maine, they'll actually send you a recommendation for what to add to your soil. So you don't waste a lot of money and time putting things in your soil that you don't need. So I'm a very frugal gardener and I like to just add what I have to add and not add things if I don't need it. So you want to make sure that you want to check your soil and pH of 6.5 is good. So here in Maine, we have a little bit more acidic soil. So you don't have to get it right at 7. It's happy at 6 point, they're happy at 6.5. And then you'll add any amendments if needed. You want to do that a little early. And then always add organic material each year before planting, and then after the season is over, you want to replenish with some nice, organic, some compost or something like that, just to kind of, put that all the nutrients the dahlias took out of the soil back in there and get that ready for the next season.
Maybe, are you okay to take questions throughout?
Yes, stop me anytime, just so we don't have to like go back or anything. Yes,
We have a
please.
question online about storage.
Okay.
Patricia wonders if my stored bulbs are shriveled, are they dead?
I have a picture later on in the brief, and I will actually show you what dead looks like and like what may be still okay. And I brought that on purpose because that's a common question. And I also wonder myself sometimes if they get a little desiccated, I'm like, oh no, did I just kill this thing? Or is it, should I throw it in the trash or should I try to keep it? So I will definitely answer that question a little bit later. Um, so now it's, we're ready to plant. You did all the things to the soil. You got the perfect spot. Um, you want to check the soil temperature should be around like 60 degrees. That's the perfect planting time. So, look at the last frost date. Usually I like to go 2 weeks of no frost. That's usually when it's safe, when you went 2 weeks consistently. I think for our zone, we are 5A. I think that's May 15th. Further south, it may be what planting zone are you here? 5B.
Yeah.
5B. You're 5B? Okay, so
Yeah.
it may be a little earlier. So lucky you. You get a couple of weeks maybe. Good for you.
We're 4 week on.
So now you want to dig your planting holes, and you want to put your tubers 4 to 6 inch deep, and you want the hole to be a little bit like 12 inches wide. You want to give them a nice roomy area because the tubers are going to make more tubers. So you want the soil to be nice and loose. Um, you're gonna lay your tuber on its side with the eye facing up. Okay, so if you do have eyes, you want that eye going up because that's where your sprout's going to go. Okay. And then your spacing should be about 18 to 24 inches apart. I have tried spacing them a little closer before, and I felt like they weren't getting as much nutrients. So if you're not doing any kind of like intensive, flower farming or anything like that, like I recommend 18 inches. I think that gives them enough spacing. And then also you want to make sure you get good airflow between your plants because they can be very susceptible to like powdery mildew and a lot of diseases and stuff. Bad things happen when you smush your plants together. Um, and don't water your tubers until they sprout, unless it's like super, super hot and dry, which in the spring it probably is not. So I would just, until you start seeing the actual leaves come up, don't water them because what happens is um, they can start rotting in the ground. Okay, so now your tubers are planted. Yes.
What do you add for amendments?
Well, that depends on your soil tests. Whatever it tells you that the soil needs, right? A lot of people add a little bit of bone meal for the root development or like phosphorus. And then some people like to like add a slow release nitrogen. And I do organic gardening, so a lot of times I'll just after they start growing on, I'll hit them with a little bit of like fish emulsion or seaweed. So, and then I also do a little foliar feeding as well to give them a little extra strength and keep them healthy. But it all depends on your soil. So
And you don't put any with like bone meal or the fish emulsion, animals don't dig them up.
I have a fence around my my field, so yeah, I haven't had a problem with any like squirrels or anything like pulling or anything getting underneath my fence and digging them up.
Okay.
Let's knock on some wood. But yeah, it threw me all the rabbits and my dog one time. I couldn't understand why she kept on digging out one of my tubers I had in my side lot, and it was because I planted it with bone meal. I figured it out. I was like, aha.
No question for you.
Yes.
What is foliar feeding?
Foliar feeding is when you spray the leaves with like a fertilizer, a very diluted amount of fertilizer, but the leaves suck in the nutrients basically, and it makes them, the plant a little bit healthier. Sometimes when plants are struggling, it's good to do a nice foliar feeding. I do it early in the morning though, because you don't want wet plants at night. So you don't want to do it in the evenings. You want to do it in the morning when it's nice and cool so that the leaves don't burn. And then you want to give it time to dry, air dry during the course of the day. Yeah.
We have one more question online.
Yes.
Do you water them in when you're planting them?
I don't. Yeah, not till I actually see some growth. Usually like with the rainfall, it rains, at least like once a week or whatever. That's enough to sustain them. It's not like tulips where you want to water them in real deep, like when you first plant them out. I don't, because I'm worried about them rotting because they don't really have any roots or anything, so they're just kind of sitting in water. Yeah. Once the heat, they feel the soil warming up and the sun, starting to hit, warm up the soil. That tells them it's time to wake up. So that's what they respond to is the heat. Any other questions? Yes.
So if you're gonna plant them by seeds, right?
Mhm.
You do the same spacings?
Yeah, so if they're seedlings, yeah, you would do the same spacing, but I would wait until they have about 3-4 leaf sets on them before you plant them out. Like if you did, said you like, unless you direct sowed them, but I would recommend sowing them in like a seed tray or something like that. And then waiting until they're about 3-4 leaf sets on the plant. And then parting off and setting it outside. That's how I've always done my seedlings. If you wanted to do ceilings, I mean, it would be okay, but I would still space them the same way unless you planned on thinning them out, But yes, because they're going to get bigger for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to put them right on top of each other because you're not going to move it. You don't want to move the tubers. And believe it or not, a ceiling will immediately start making a little tiny baby tuber because I've learned that from my cuttings and from ceilings that like if you look at it, it starts making like a little baby tuber. It's really cute. Yeah. Um, so once the dahlias have sprouted, you want to water deeply once a week. If you get 1 inch of rainfall a week, that's good. They don't like to be super wet. They like a more like, have you ever heard water deeply weekly for you gardeners? Have you ever heard that with your plants? It's better actually to water deeply less often because the roots go deeper. If you water all the time, just a little bit at each at a time, the roots actually just kind of stay shallow and they don't go deeper down. Yeah. So it's best to water that way. Now in the summer months, you may find that you want to water a little bit more because it's just so hot and they kind of have a hard time hydrating themselves a little bit. They get a little cranky in the summertime. Um, and having a rain gauge is always good because I don't know about you, but I don't know really how much it rained each time it rains. But I just bought like a cheap plastic rain gauge and I keep it out there and I record each time it rains. And it's the best thing ever because then you know exactly how much it rained that week. You know what I mean? You can add it up and figure that out. So it's a good trick. Um, and then, like I said, I use an organic and diluted foliar spray every couple of weeks just for plant health. We call it Foliar Fridays on our farm. So we just go and do them all so we don't forget. And then don't let the lower leaves touch the ground. So kind of like tomatoes, you know how you pull the lower leaves off to keep them from getting soil splashed up and things like that. It's the same thing for dahlias. You want to, and it gives them good airflow underneath of the plant, and it keeps those diseases from happening. So that's always a good trick. You don't have to do super high up. I've seen some people with dahlia plants like they take like a foot off of them. The plant does need its leaves. It's a little extreme, but at least like 6 inches off usually when the plant is mature. I start taking, the leaves off, and you can tell they kind of start doing it themselves. Like the leaves start kind of getting yellow. They don't get as much light and stuff. So I just take them away. And I always take those leaves, don't drop them right there because if there is disease or if there is insects living on them or whatever, I take them and I compost them. I put them somewhere else. A lot of leaf debris is not actually good for them. Um,
Danny, will you talk a little bit at some point, talk more about your feeding schedules?
yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I do. I do plan in with like you know a like a um, slow release nitrogen. But you actually want to walk off the fertilizer towards the end of the growing season because you want them to start making tuber babies and not flowering as much. So after like a month before what you think is going to be your first frost, I actually stop feeding them altogether because that tells them not to make as many flowers and then start concentrating on making me some sweet tuber babies. So that's when, I stop feeding them, but like usually every couple of weeks. And then I look at the leaves. The leaves will tell you a lot about a plant, just like if someone's sick or something like that, there's signs. So if I think that it's missing something, some nitrogen, like if the leaves aren't as green or phosphorus, um, so I just kind of assess the situation. I try not to add too many things, especially as an organic farmer. I really take pride in like not doing too much. And sometimes you can go a little overboard with fertilizing. You can actually burn your plants, you can burn your leaves, and you can do more harm than good. So I try to take it easy on that. Any other questions with fertilizing?
We've got a question about what type of fertilizer you use. I know you talked about foliar, but maybe
Yeah.
the mix of.
I really like I'm not a spokesperson for Neptune's Harvest or anything, but I like the Neptune's Harvest because it's organic and I think it's, the fish emulsion and the seaweed extract is really good. And then I use a lot of organic compost. I just, load it up and get it dropped off at my farm and I make sure I add a lot of organic materials. Now, once it's good, like once my soil test says that I'm good on organic materials, then it's just kind of a thin layer each year after that. But when we first started our farm, we had to add a lot of organic compost just because of our soil was very rocky and ledgy, and really our first soil test was not very good, so we really had to load it in there. But now we kind of have a really sweet spot, so now it's just adding a little bit and then a little bit of fertilizer, but not too much. So that's what we do. So let's talk about grooming your dahlias. Okay, so now you got these beautiful plants coming up and you're super excited because you're just about to see some blooms. And one thing I recommend is pinching or topping. If you want the plant to be bushier, and who doesn't like more flowers? Does anybody grow a flower and doesn't like having more flowers? Okay, I didn't think so. So if you want more flowers, what you do is when the plant's about like 12 inches tall, has at least 3 or 4 leaf sets, and this is going to be hard because sometimes they will have a little bud on the top, but I want you to pinch it, okay? And what you do is right here, see where the top is? This is kind of where it's going to just keep growing up. You're gonna take some super sharp scissors, and you clean scissors too, very sanitized clean scissors, and you're just gonna lob that right off, okay? And what that does is that tells the plant to start sending out more lateral branches like this, okay? And then that plant is gonna get bushier and you're gonna have more blooms and it's gonna be stockier. If you let it grow, and you can, if you like really tall plant, that's fine. But you will have to stake it a little bit more because what it's going to do is going to be very tall, and the stalk is going to be really thick, like a broom handle almost, and it's just going to you're not going to get as many blooms off of it, and it'll be like really hard to stake it up. So I recommend that you top it, and you'll be a lot happier, I promise. And then if you want to disbud, and this is how you get bigger blooms, is you'll see here the kind of dahlias will have like three buds, right? And when you're first forming, what you do is you take these 2 off, the outer 2 off, and then the middle one will grow taller, and it'll actually it'll be a bigger bloom. So if you want like a really nice big bloom, that's the way you do it. So when I was doing dahlia shows, I would, like, as soon as I could see the little side buds, I would pop them off, and then that bloom would be, my keeper for the show. Any questions about that?
Do all dahlias have multiple buds?
Mhm.
They do.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you can keep those too. I like for arrangements and stuff, for flower arrangements, a lot of times I'll keep them because I think they're cute and they add a little interest and stuff like that. It's just when you want like a bigger, higher quality, flower, maybe you want something for like an arrangement or for your, for inside your house or to take to a show. I mean, it's all up to you. This is all, personal preference here. But that's just one thing to know, that it will help with creating a bigger bloom.
We've got a question. Can you propagate that apical stem? Like, you dip it in hormone? Like, is this person does not like pinching out their plants?
Oh, yes, you can take cuttings from the actual leaves. I've never actually done that, so I'm not sure. I can't speak from experience, but it can be done. I'm going to talk a little bit about taking cuttings from an actual tuber, and how you do that. But yes, there's many ways you can propagate a dahlia plant. You can get lots of babies off of one plant several different ways, and that's definitely one, is you can take cuttings. I've never done from the topping. I've heard of people doing from the side shoots or the leaves. You can do those. Okay, so staking dahlias. Now, every summer we'll have that one storm, and you know which one we're talking about, that one thunderstorm that just wreaks havoc. I call it destructive rain. And in Maryland, we used to get them really badly. Actually had a tree fall on my dahlias one time. That was I cried. I did. I'll admit it. I went out there and cried. But they actually came back. I just chopped it off at the bottom. Like if you have a plant that falls down, just cut it at the bottom and it'll send up more. You may not see it bloom because of the short growing season, but it'll come back. So fun fact. You want to make sure you choose very sturdy stakes. There's like green poles you can buy at the garden center or whatever. Those are not good. Those are not strong enough. I recommend T-posts or something like that. Something a lot stronger because they will bend them very easily. Um, and what I do is I do corralling. So if I have a row of dahlias, what I do is I put T-posts like every 10 feet down the row on the outside and then like make a box around them basically. And then I take baling twine and I just, I like 3 different levels of baling twine and that just corrals them in and they just stay in there, so their branches will flap over a little bit, but it keeps them in place. And that's the best thing I found that works for me. I've tried it individually staking them up and it doesn't work as well. If you do that, just know that, you know, sometimes they can get away from you. So you have to kind of stay on top of them to keep staking them up more, like tie them off with like garden tape or something like that, to kind of keep them up. Yeah.
So let's say I have 2 dahlia plants, and obviously it's not as big as what you're describing with the tea stakes.
Mhm.
But if I have just 2 of them, do you recommend that I do a square?
Yep, you
Still,
do.
even with the 2?
I would do 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 around the perimeter of them and then do it that way.
Okay.
And you won't be disappointed. What I recommend though, if you're doing that, is to put the T-posts in early, because what you don't want to do is the tubers to be growing under the ground and then you accidentally impale them. So whenever I put stakes in, I do it at planting time because you will poke them. So,
You can't do it individually, really.
yeah, yeah,
Just don't use the really thin, like plastic stakes. It's got to be something like maybe something a little more hardy.
Yeah.
People use like what is it,
rebar.
rebar.
Yeah, rebar works really well. I've seen a lot of dahlia farms use rebar.
You can stake
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is space. Yes, they can get tall, like 5 foot, you
So
know.
you don't recommend like the green plastic ones they buy at Home Depot?
Those have always done me wrong.
Okay.
And I'm speaking from experience, but those are the ones I've cried because they just broke in one storm and they were done. They got bent. Yeah, they're just not good, unfortunately. They're good for like other things, but not for dahlias. Dahlias are strong. So, yes.
What about the tomato cages that are flat that form the square?
We've done tomato cages
The ones that
before.
are flat, not the round ones.
Yeah, not the round ones because they'll get hot, they'll get
But the ones
heavy.
that are flat that you can
You could do
form
that.
into a square.
Yes, you could do that as well. Yeah, I tried the tomato cages with the round ones when I first started growing them, and they got tall and they just flopped, and then they got broken during storms. So yeah, but you could try it. Everything's worth a try. If it works for you, then go for it. That's what I say. So, and if I do certain things a certain way, and if you already grow dahlias and whatever it's different and it works for you, then I say just keep doing it. If you're happy with your plants and you're happy with how it's going, then that's awesome. Just keep going, keep doing it. Especially if it's like cheaper or easier or whatever. Yeah, keep doing it. Yep. Yeah, you want to make sure you put the stakes deep enough in the soil too. Don't just like a couple inches down. You want it, depending on how tall the stake is, get it in there. For harvest tips. All right, so now your beautiful flowers are blooming and you want to harvest them. So when's the best time to harvest them? When it's cool. because they get dehydrated really quickly. So you want to do it in the early in the morning or in the evening. And then you want to get them right in water as well. They have a hollow stem, so they're going to want to drink water right away. So don't harvest them all, walk around the yard, throw them on the porch, anything like that. Like get those girls right in water, okay? Um, and that I took a class through Cornell this year, and they actually did studies on the best, like how many leaves to leave on the plant for the longest phase life. And they said strip all but the top 2 leaves off the stalk. So they said that they ran trials and they said that was the best phase life they got. So at least leave 2 leaves on. You can even leave 2 sets on. So, and they'll be happy. Dahlias don't have as long of a phase life as other plants. So, you don't expect them to be like over, 10 days or something like that. Usually like 5 days is about the max you'll get out of them before they start kind of looking a little funky. But if you change the water out every day and give them a fresh cut, just like, most flowers you would buy from the store or whatever. And if you put your blooms in when you first cut them and you take them out of the field, if you put them in a nice, cool, dark place, like a basement or something like that, and just let them rehydrate for, maybe like 5-6 hours, then arrange with them and put them, add them with your other flowers and stuff like that. They'll be a lot happier. They'll rehydrate, they'll perk back up, and they'll be good. And then I love it when people buy my flowers and they put them in like the really, really, really hot kitchen. Kitchens are probably the worst place ever to cut flowers, especially like a really bright and hot kitchen because the heat just gets them, you know what I mean? And the bright light just makes them go spent right away. So if you have cut flowers, you want to put them somewhere like in a cooler, darker area. And they'll last a lot longer, I promise. All right. Okay. So now that we talked about all the great things about growing dahlias, let's talk about the kind of not so great things about growing dahlias, the disease. And dahlias are, just like any plant, they're susceptible, but I'm going to teach you what to look for. That way and you can get those bad plants off of your property and in the garbage where they belong. Because I do not like diseases on my farm. So to the left there, you'll see leafy gall. And what it looks like is just a ton of like shoots coming up. And it looks like just like an overabundance. So this is when you dig up your dahlia tubers. You're not going to see them when you plant these here. And my tubers do not have disease, but like you're not going to see it when you buy the tuber. You're going to see it when you pull the tubers up during the winter months. So just know that. It'll be like, oh, what is that? So the leafy gall, and then here is the crown gall, and it looks like kind of like cauliflower, and it's like swollen around the crown of the tuber, and it looks really gross. As soon as you see it, you're just like, oh my God, what is that? So just know that these two type of situations, you don't want to save the tubers. You want to actually just take the whole clump of tubers and you just put them in a trash bag and you get them off of your property so they don't infect the rest of your soil. Okay. Because they can be spread. So you don't want them, and the plant's not going to be healthy. So you just, even if it gave you some flowers and stuff like that, just do yourself a favor and just, don't grow them anymore.
And don't compost.
Don't compost them now. You never want to take a sick plant that had any kind of disease and compost it. You want to just, just put it in the trash and take it out. So, because that'll just spread. And then you'll have a whole bunch of sick dahlias instead of just one. And then some other dahlia diseases is the dahlia mosaic virus. And how you can tell now, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and every year everybody posts like, is this dahlia disease? Is this gall? Is this whatever? But you can tell because you see the vein here is like not as green. It's clearing, it's vein clearing. And then you see these like splotches here. So that's how you can tell dahlia disease. And the American Dahlia Society has pictures. So if you ever have any questions about your dahlia, they have a whole bunch of information on dahlia disease and you can look it up. They have tests too. You can actually send it into the lab and they'll tell you. My friends that are growers and breeders, they send theirs in for testing. And then powdery mildew, and this will probably happen more towards the spring or the fall time frame when it starts getting a little cooler and a little bit like the fog and stuff like that. It will basically, you'll see like powder all over your leaves, and you can't use any kind of like fungicide and stuff pretty much after you've already had this going on. Just like any plant, once you see this, it's kind of a done deal. But it won't kill the plant. Like you can save the tubers. It's fine. You'll be okay. It's not going to be pretty. But it usually happens towards the end of the year anyway, the growing season. But what you want to do is, if you know you have a powdery mildew issue in your yard, by like a certain point, you might want to use some kind of like fungicide on your plants as a preventative, because you can prevent things like that, but you can't once it's done, right? Corey, once it's done, it's a done deal. Yeah.
Oh, we've got an interesting question from Thankful. She says, I've heard that dahlias will go wild or turn a reddish orange color and won't ever return to the color it was when you first bought it. What causes this?
Well, that's a genetic variation that I was talking about. So what may have happened, and I don't know exactly where you got your tubers from or whatever, but sometimes I've had that before where I bought things from like certain sellers online and then they said it was going to be one thing and then it turned out to be another, is because of that genetic variation.
Was that separate from like, say, some cultivars are unstable, or is
Yes.
that's what you're talking
Well, I
about?
think it's because they didn't grow it on for long enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they didn't grow it on for like a trial or whatever. Maybe they tried to kind of, like the Holland or somewhere that it came from, or Walmart, or, one of those like big box stores. Whoever bred those may not have trialed those long enough to really have like a true clone, a true variety. So yeah, that's probably what happened. And I've had that happen to myself, where I thought maybe they just made a mistake and gave me the wrong tuber or something, but it was just like it was obviously the same form and it was kind of the same color, but it wasn't. It was like bleached out. It was weird. So yeah, I've had that happen before. Yeah. So hopefully it's something she still loved. So, even if it wasn't the same as what she thought it was going to be, hopefully it was still a nice flower and,
Yeah, orange reddish sounds pretty cool.
yeah. So sometimes it can be a pleasant surprise. So what do you,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I have questions. So once you have powdery mildew, that's it. So, but in the mosaic virus, do you take the leaves off, or is it the
No.
same kind of thing? Like,
I would get rid of the plant.
get rid of the whole
Yeah.
thing, including the tuber?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but in the powdery mildew, you don't have to get rid of it.
No,
Okay.
you just try to control for it. And I'm going to tell you, in this slide here, this is what's going to help you control that so that you don't have that problem, or at least so you can recognize like what causes it so you can kind of get ahead of it. So the first thing, like what I do on my farm is I'm always walking, and I call it scouting. First thing in the morning when I wake up, I go out there and I'm always looking for changes in my plants. And if I have sick plants, I pull them out because it's not good. They're not going to be healthy. Their tubers aren't going to be good anymore. So if you have plants that you think are infected, it's best to just pull it, and you might be really attached to it, but it's better than infecting your entire garden because remember, insects carry diseases from one plant to another. So if they're a biting insect, they might bite that mosaic virus dahlia, then go over to the next dahlia next to it, and then bite that one, and then spread the disease. So you might infect all of your plants. And then don't allow the leaves to stay wet, like we were talking about with, early morning, that type of thing. If you do overhead water, make sure you do it early in the morning so it has time to dry. You don't want the leaves to be wet overnight. And good airflow, proper spacing, and sunlight. Those are perfect ways of keeping the powdery mildew from setting into your plants. And take care of the soil. That's the number one thing. It'll feed the plants and make them more resistant to diseases. Clean up your leaf debris. So if you're, pulling leaves off of plants and things like that, go ahead and just scoop those up and put those in the compost pile. You don't want a bunch of leaves rotting everywhere around your plants. If you do mulch, this is really important. If you mulch around your plant, you want to leave kind of like you don't mulch real close to a tree, to the bark. Same principle, leave like a couple inch space around the stem because it'll cause stem rot. It'll cause a bunch of issues. So, just know that. And mulching is good, it keeps the soil nice and moist, and it also protects the soil from exposure and erosion and things like that, and it's great. But you just don't want to mulch right on top of the stem of the plant. And then sanitize your tools when moving forward. I use like a 10% bleach solution in a bucket, and I just go, when I cut one plant, I just dip it for like 10 seconds, my snips, and then I move to the next plant, and then I'll cut, and then I'll dip, and then I'll cut, and then I'll dip. That's how I do it. Kind of like roses too. Roses are very disease prone. But I do that on purpose so that I don't spread disease throughout my plants. And the same with when you're dividing your tubers, you want to, if you're cutting, you're dividing them up between, you have one tuber you're working with and then you're moving on to another tuber, you want to sanitize between working with each tuber. So that's good, very important to know. And that's just gardening, in general, is good to sanitize your tools. Okay. So don't look at this, okay? Let's see how good at you are at knowing your bugs, your bad bugs. All right, we'll start with the top left. You're walking your garden and you see these nasty critters on your dahlia. What do you think those are? They're these little tiny, yes, aphids. Yes. Nice steady stream of water will knock them off. That's one good way of getting rid of aphids.
But can I ask you, I've heard that, but then I think, all right, I took them off with the water, but they're on the ground now. Are
Yeah.
they just gonna come right up onto the plant?
Well,
they're not dead.
Yes. So some of them will drown, obviously, but you want to just keep them off your plants. You're hoping that something else eats them
Okay.
while they're on the ground. So I try to let nature take care of itself, but when they're pervasive, all over my plant, I know they're going to chew that thing alive. So I get them off, before they can do all of that damage. But eventually, especially early in the season, the aphids tend to show up before all the bad, the good predatory bugs show up. So you kind of have that period where it always seems like the bad bugs are out, but the good ones aren't out yet. So, that's in the springtime, especially, it's really, really critical. And if you have a hoop house or indoor greenhouse and you get an aphid outbreak, that's even worse because they can really do some damage in there because the predatory bugs aren't inside unless you release some inside of it. There's nothing to eat them. So it gets real bad. Does anybody know who this is? That's a thrip. And those are tough. Thrips are, I don't know. Thrips are terrible. Yeah. Squish them, but they're fast and they're just super annoying and they eat your flowers and it's bad. What I like to do is I have a bloom that I'm really like, that's going to be so beautiful and perfect. I cover it with organza bag, those like jewelry bags, or you can use bridal tool and you can cover the buds. But I just buy on Amazon. I just buy like the cheap, like drawstring, jewelry bags, and I just put them on top with a bloom, and then nothing gets in my girls, and that's how I do it. So, and it's been working great so far, and it's a physical barrier, really cheap, and I don't have to spray anything, so I don't kill any good bugs. I think everybody probably knows who this is, right? Yep, Japanese beetle, and the Cornell talk that I listened to, the class that I took, they said the Japanese beetle population is actually declining. Yeah, there's some kind of like weird thing. So I know, that's what I heard. So, but if you have them, they're just know that they're very sluggish and sleepy and lazy in the morning. And so you'll see them sitting right on top of your plants. What I take is I make them a nice hot bubble bath. I take a cup of really hot soapy water and I just dunk them into my hot soapy water. So that's the trick. You make them a nice hot bubble bath and it works really well. You know who this is? That's a leafhopper. And those little buggers are really fast too. And then this one here, yep, spider mites. And you can tell because they have like webs all over them and stuff, and they're just really nasty. And again, these won't kill. None of these are going to kill your plants completely, right? They're just going to chew up your flowers and they're going to make you really super frustrated. So, so as you're walking around your garden and stuff, just, take notice of things. So, and try to identify the bugs before you go and spray and you kill them because they might be a good bug actually. Okay, so other threats to dahlias: slugs, squirrels, because they steal your tubers. They will literally. I sold a bunch of dahlia tubers, and the lady was like, "Oh, squirrels ate every single one of them." Deer, because they like, especially when they're tender, like nice new, brand new, young dahlia plants. They love them. Rabbits too, and then husbands with weed whackers. Number one threat. Chris.
You've gotten in trouble, I'm guessing.
He likes to get dangerously close to my plants too. Like he's like, I'm watching him and he's watching me, and he like tries to get as close as he can to like see when I'm at my breaking point to when I yell at him. Like, stop it. Okay, so we talked about scouting for insects. We talked about the the bubble bath. We talked about the stream of water, clean up your leaf debris, and we talked about the organza bags. And it's really effective. It really works. Okay, so how do you make more dahlias from the dahlia that you have? You have one tuber, right? How do you make more dahlias? You take cuttings. And we're going to talk about that. That's me, my kitchen, looking very surgical, like a surgeon. Okay. So most growers use the standard 10, the 10-inch by 20-inch trays. So what you do is you're going to fill it up with soil, and then you're going to lay the tuber down, eye up, in the tray. You can cover them with a little bit of dirt, and then you're going to let them sprout. Once this, or you can do a pot. Yeah. Yeah, well, you can do the trays, or you can do it like an actual individual pot. I've done it either way. I like it when the necks are sticking up straight out of the air. So I tend to do the pots because the sprout will go straight up and it can kind of get to them better than a big tray full of like all these dahlia tubers I have to move around. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want.
I'm sorry. So when the nodes are up, but you don't cover the node with the dirt, right? Or is it just placed in?
No, you want the sprout, the neck and the crown to be exposed because then you can be able to see the sprout coming up. Yeah. And then when the sprouts appear, when they get to be about 10 to 3 inches long, you're gonna measure about a 1/4 inch up from where the the sprout is coming out of the actual tuber, and you can get like X-Acto knives or like a sharp knife and cut it right there. And so like let's say this is the tuber, and then this is the sprout. You're gonna cut like right here. All right, you're gonna cut it off. Now you have this little sprout. You're gonna pull all the leaves off except for the top two. And then you're going to prepare your tray. So you're going to have like a tray with, I use cell tray, but some people use just like a tray, a blank tray with no cells in it, full of um, full of soil. I like the cell trays better, but I take a pencil and I poke a hole, or a chopstick, and I poke a hole in the cell tray so that I have a hole, because when you go to push the little the stem down, you don't want anything to like stop it. So you want to get it all the way down to the bottom of the tray. So you just keep doing that. You just keep taking cuttings, and you can do one, you can do like a whole bunch of, tubers that you are sprouting. Um, and you can use rooting hormone, but you don't have to. So some people do, some people don't. It doesn't matter. It'll still grow. And then, so what you're going to do is now you're going to put, once you have all your little cuttings done and they're all in the tray, you're going to put some water on the bottom, maybe like a half inch of water. The key is moisture and the key is humidity in this case. So you're going to put a humidity dome over top of your tray, and you're going to make sure you have some water on the bottom of the tray so the roots are like kind of sitting in water. And then you want to put them on a germination mat and keep them about 70 degrees. And then in a couple of weeks, you'll notice that they'll start taking roots, because when you go to pull the cutting up, it'll kind of give you, when you go to give it a little tug, it won't move. Like the roots are holding it in place. And so that's how you take cuttings. I don't know if any of you propagate any like hydrangeas or mums, but you kind of can do you can do pretty much the same thing the same way. But that's how you can make, a ton. And what happens now, you can save that same tuber that you took the cutting from, and it literally will start just resprouting again. It'll be a different spot on the tuber. It won't be the same spot, but through another eye, it'll form another eye, and it'll form another sprout. I just don't recommend taking any more than like 8 cuttings from one plant. And then if you do take that many cuttings, I don't recommend growing that mother tuber any longer, because just like all mothers, she's tired. She just had 8 babies, like she's done. So I wouldn't grow her no more. But you got 8 plants, you got 8 kids from her, so that's good. But if you take a couple cuttings, then you can go ahead and pop that tuber, or plant that tuber out too. You're from breeders and things like that, people that I know, that's what they recommend. All right. So another way that and this is really fun, by the way. Another way that you can get more dahlias is to save the seeds. Has anyone ever tried that before? No? I recommend it. I just try to save some seeds and grow like a couple seeds next year. I promise it's going to be fun. It's really interesting to see what you get. Most people just do the work, let the bees do the work, and cross-pollinate them. The open-faced dahlias, like my Verone's Obsidian, I'm sorry, right here, but this is the Verone. Right here, like the open-faced ones that have all the pollen ring that's easier to find. That's actually the ones that like breathe and make the most seeds, I find. Because the bees can get right to them. If they have a bunch of petals, and it's not till they actually blow open, they expose their pollen, that that they'll get pollinated. But the ones that are open like that, their pollen's already out there like from day one, and they get pollinated really easy. But anyway, once the petals fall off the plant, then you'll notice it looks like this here. So this is all the petals are gone, and it makes this little little pod thing. what I do is I always squeeze them because if they still have some like moisture to them, like if water comes out, then they're not ready yet. You want them to be dry. So just give it a little squeeze until it feels dry. And then you can actually just pop this off here. What I do is I crush it in my hand and I go, and I just blow it and all the chaff goes away and all the little seeds are left in my hand. So that's how I save the seeds. It's really cool. And then you can just pop, like sow those 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost, before the last frost, like the following season. Just keep it in a little like paper bag or a little like seed saving thing or pill bottle or whatever you got, and just keep it in like a cool, dry place over the winter. And then you can plan out your dahlias and it'll be a surprise at what you got because you don't know who bred with what. And, some people can do, if you have enough of the same type of plant, like 2 different types of plants, you could do every other. So they kind of cross with each other, like a white one with a red one, with a white one, with a red one. I've always wanted to do that to see, because, bees just kind of pollinate like sequentially. They'll just go from plant to plant. So I heard that's how some people like to do it. Like if they're setting up some kind of like breeding program for their dahlias. Yep. And these are what the seeds look like. Yep. And you want to wait till they have 2 to 3 leaf sets before you go ahead and plant them out if you started them inside. And always harden them off. Don't just put them out there like first day in full sun. They won't be happy. All right. So you grew your dahlias all summer. It's fall now, and you just got hit with we call it frostness. Chris calls it frostness. He gets excited because dahlia season's over, but gets his way back for a little bit. Not before digging them up though. So let's get ready for the big dig. And this is my family. This was last fall, and my mom and dad came out, and that's Chris, and that's Luna, my dog, and they helped me. So things that you'll need. First, you want to get some flagging tape, and something always good to do before the frost comes because it will turn your plants really black and ugly and you won't recognize them any longer. I mean, unless you only have like 2 and you know where they are, you know what they are. I recommend before the frost comes, just take some flagging tape and write the name with a Sharpie and tie it around the bottom stalk so you know what that plant's name was so you don't forget. And I'm telling you, you'll be happy you did it. Okay. Next, you're going to need a garden fork or a shovel. You're going to need bypass loopers or something to cut the bottom stalk because it's going to be really wide and big. You want containers or you want a bucket of water with your bleach between your cuts of the stalk, you want to sanitize. Containers to put tuber clumps in. And then beer and pizza for friends and family to help you dig your tubers. Make it sound like a party and they will come. And then you're like, by the way, we're going to dig tubers today. So when do you dig them? I like to wait till the first killing frost and then maybe wait like 10, 15 days. You don't have to dig them up right away. It actually is good for the plant because it tells the plant that it's time to go to sleep. The frost came and the tubers start storing all of their energy. So it's actually not good to dig up your tubers like right after the killing frost. It's actually better. I think they store better that way. But at the very least, maybe you're on vacation or something. You want to at least leave them in the ground for 120 days. That plant should have been in the ground for at least 120 days before you go ahead and dig them. And definitely before the ground freezes, though, because then you won't be able to get to them, and they'll be stuck there all winter. So for digging tubers, you want to cut the stalk down to about 2 to 3 inches above the soil line and make kind of like a little handle, and you've got your flagging tape that tells you what it is. You want to start further away from the clump because you don't know how long the tubers are. Some of them are really long, like big sweet potatoes almost. So you want to kind of work your way. You want to start further out and kind of just take the garden fork and go around and loosen the soil. And then what I do is I put my hands in there and I kind of feel around to where the roots are, where the tubers are. And I just kind of slowly like move the soil away. You want to do this on a dry day, by the way. Don't do it on a super wet day. It's all muddy and gross. But you want to just like slowly start like working them up. And then you don't want to grab by the stalk. You want to just kind of pull underneath and gradually lift them out like that. So that way, and don't shake them either because then all the tubers will fall off. That's happened. So don't do that. And that's how you end up with mystery tubers in next year because you don't know where they are. So yeah, so that's lifting your tubers.
Yeah, just a heads up, we're at 5.
Okay, all right. And we talked about leafy gall. So do you store the tubers or in clumps or you divide the tubers in the spring? This is a big question. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you is great. I like to do it in the fall. I like to like split them all up and everything so that I can sell them and so I can just kind of be done. And I find that they store a little bit better, but so other people store them as clumps and then they wait till the spring for them to eye up and then they'll split them up. It's totally up to you. It doesn't matter.
When you get them out of the ground, do you take the dirt off before you store them?
So if you're going to lift them and split them, I wash mine before I split them. So if you wash them, you should split them right away. Like I'm talking like that day or the next day. If you're going to store them with the dirt on. Yeah. Or the soil on, I should say. Best temperature to store them is 42 degrees. But between 40 and 55 degrees is fine. Just don't let them freeze because they will turn to mush. So some basements are a little warmer than others. As long as you keep them between those temperatures, they'll be okay. You want to kind of keep the humidity around 80 to 90% if you can, and store them in like a plastic bag or tote or something like that will definitely help with the humidity. It'll keep the humidity good in there. You want to store them in a container that's dry and frost free. Use whatever you got, plastic bins. Paper bags, I don't recommend paper bags. I think it desiccates them too much. I think they get dried out. Or cardboard boxes. I don't recommend that, but some people do it and it's fine for them, but it doesn't work for me. And then you want to use some kind of absorbent material like peat moss, which is bad, but vermiculite, coarse sand, sawdust. Some people use like the cedar wood shavings, like for hamsters. You know how you buy like the shavings? Those work. But you want something kind of absorbent. And then you always want to check your tubers at least once a month for any signs of mold or rotting or shriveling. You want to get those out. Okay. Now, some tubers can be saved. You'll notice they'll get a little moldy on the ends. You can actually cut them to where there's no more rot and then dip them in cinnamon and save it. So if you have a tuber, it's just kind of mushy on the end. You can just cut it until it looks like a potato again, like it's not rotten anywhere, not black in the middle. Dip it in cinnamon and it'll be fine. You can save your tuber that way. The tuber doesn't actually need to be like the whole tuber. Like if you accidentally hit it with your shovel or something or spear it with your garden fork, it'll callus over and it'll be okay. You can actually cut the tuber in half. It's a super huge tuber like this. You can actually just cut it in half and it'll be fine. All right, so here's the question that we had. Remember? It was how dry is dry? So I would say no more than a 4. This is questionable. This is dead on arrival, dead on arrival, dead on arrival. That's dead on arrival. But this is like maybe, but I mean, if you really love that tuber, maybe try, but looks like a goner to me. Yeah. I hope that helps. All right, we're at the end. I need it. These are some resources. American Dahlia Society is amazing. They have Dahlia University on their website, and you don't have to be a member or anything. You just go on there, and you can also look up like the different varieties of dahlias, and it's great. New England Dahlia Society. They're based out of Massachusetts, but you can join them. They have a website and they do Zoom meetings and they do tuber sales and they do shows every year. You can go to a dahlia show. It's really cool. If you've never been to one, you can see all the different varieties of dahlias in one room. It's amazing. University of Maine Extension is always a good resource for soil science or for diseases and, any questions you have about just general gardening. They're awesome. You can phone a friend. That's me. I'm now your friend. So if you have any questions about your dahlias, and then there's some great books out there. Floret Farms, Discovering Dahlias. It'll basically go through A through Z. Really good book and beautiful pictures of dahlias in there. So I highly recommend if you look at the library or, if you see it at the library or pretty inexpensive online. With that, is there any other questions? Yes.
I sort my tubers in clumps. And so I'm wondering, is it any advantage one way or the other to like divide it so it's single tubers, or can you plant 2 or 3 tubers in a clump?
You can do a whole clump. You could divide them out. Depends on, how much growing space you have, if you want a bunch of plants or if you want just one plant.
Well, what's going to be the difference if you divide
It's going to have more, it's going to be a bushier plant for sure. It's going to, because all those tubers are going to make, they're going to eye up and they're going to have send more growth out. They're all going to have individual stalks. So if you want to plant this bushier, you can keep it as a clump. Or if you want something that's a little more streamlined and, not as bushy and wide, then I would do a single tuber. Yeah. And plus it's also fun to trade with your friends and get new kinds, Yeah. Any other questions?
We have a question online. Mary Davis, she says, you said to wake them up at 70 degrees. My furnace is probably 80 degrees. Is that too hot or too much too soon?
Is she storing right now? If she's storing it now, it's a little hot.
Yes.
Maybe move it to a different spot. Like a cooler spot in the basement or in a garage or something like that. Like you just don't want them to freeze, but 80 is it's a little hot. Those girls are gonna wake up. They're gonna have like really long stalks on them already. And by the way, if you end up with one that's got a really long stalk, like you save the tuber and it just woke up super early, you can just break that stalk off and it'll grow another one. So, you don't want it too long because then it's gonna grow all weird. Yeah.
The medium that's in your plastic bags
Mhm.
now, is that what you store your dahlias
Yes.
in?
Yes.
And what is that?
That's vermiculite. Coarse there's fine vermiculite, which is like dust.
Yeah.
And this is coarse vermiculite. And I find it's the best for me. But again, if you keep your dahlias in something else and it works great, then go for it. Just, because vermiculite's a little more expensive. You get wood shavings, the cedar shavings are a little bit cheaper. But I haven't been happier. I haven't been as happy with them myself. But that's the conditions in my storage,
So
might be different in
vermiculite is
yours.
more expensive, but you can reuse it. Just put it in a plastic container and leave it in the sun for a while and let it sanitize it.
Yeah,
Save it.
it is reusable. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yes.
Is this part gonna be online?
Yes. Yeah, it'll be posted to our YouTube page. So if you've missed anything, we'll be posting this online on our YouTube page. So you can go back and watch again.
Yeah.
Is your farm open for viewing during the
Yes, so if you go
season?
to our website,
So it will be later on. Right now, we're building our home there, so it's very construction-y. So we're not really letting many visitors out until we have our driveway fixed, and it's a little more visitor friendly. But we will eventually. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but
but
we're
our
fine.
seat can go down pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm sure. This one's pretty bad right now. I don't know. But yeah, we will be allowing, people to come visit and stuff like that. But we're on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a website and we have a blog on our website. So, feel free to connect with us and keep up with us and see all the beautiful dahlias come up. And, we've been farming for only a couple years now. So we're still starting, and we make sure we record our journey so that people can see, all of the, adventure we're on basically. I would definitely call it an adventure, right, Chris?
So for buying, how would we, if you were interested in purchasing, do you have like a site where you sell from or?
I will this fall, starting
Okay.
this fall. Yeah, we're still kind of getting our inventory up, and we just got our website. So we still need to like post all the pictures and get everything. So we are gonna start selling in the fall, but for now, these are some of my tuber babies that we had extras of. Because I had like a lot of extras. Some of these really make some babies. So, but in the fall, we'll have a lot more variety that we'll be selling and then shipping in the spring, or you can come to the farm and pick them up. Either way. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
And you can make sure to come back next week for the last of our winter lecture series, which will be Build Better Buffers, which will be myself and Jim Skinner of Thompson Lake Environmental talking about building out lakeside buffers. So we hope you can join us.
Oh, no, that's not stupid.
Using native plants to.
I don't remember.
If you-
Did you make that?